Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there lived 3 bears who, unlike most bears, had developed the capacity for carpentry and porridge making, but nobody ever talks about that. This is Vaguely Scientific. I am Derek, and I am definitely not science-y enough. So joining me as always is Jim, who is way too science-y. Hi, Jim.
I blew up a hydrogen balloon today.
I'm sure you did. And the scienciness of our guest this week is just right. Please welcome Joe back to the show. Hello, Joe.
Hi.
Hello.
This is a show where we answer the most ridiculous audience-submitted questions in a manner that we like to call vaguely scientific. But before we tackle those questions, it's time for Jim's fun science fact of the day. Jim?
All right. This one is about cacti. Well, it's about a cactus, I should say. The oldest cactus was named Old Granddaddy, and it lived in Saguaro National Park and was apparently over 300 years old when it died. So it's the oldest known cactus that we've ever found. And unfortunately, it died of a bacterial infection or something like that. So it wasn't like someone walked over and kicked it over.
So it could have gotten older.
Yeah, in theory. But
Interesting.
I saw a picture of it. It was huge.
So one day the world will just be cacti and tortoises.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically. And quite frankly, I'm here for it.
Yeah, I mean, I would be down for that. You ever see pictures of dinosaur times when you had like the I guess this was actually before dinosaur times when it was like those club moss looking things. That's like a cool aesthetic, and I think we should get back to that.
We should get back to that. Got to do some terraforming.
Yeah. Maybe when we fix up Mars and make it livable, that's what we can put there is big giant club mosses.
We got a plan.
Yup.
Yeah.
Well, before we move on to our questions for the week, there's something I want to bring up, and that is stuff we actually bothered to look up later, but weren't technically wrong about. I wanted to include it anyway, but yeah. So in the last episode, Catherine brought up the musical composition called Flight of the Bumblebee. And we weren't sure at the time whether or not that was the composer's original title for the piece or not. And it turns out that it is. Flight of the Bumblebee is from an opera written by Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov called The Tale of Tsar Sultan, which is adapted from a fairy tale whose full title is The Tale of Tsar Sultan, of his son, the renowned and mighty Bogoty, Prince Gvaidin Sultanovich, and of the beautiful Princess Swan. It's a convoluted mess. The story starts with 3 sisters, the youngest of whom is chosen by Tsar Sultan to be his wife, and the other 2 sisters become his royal cook and weaver and become jealous of their younger sister.
That's fair.
Yeah, right? So when the Tsar goes off to war, the youngest sister gives birth to a son, Prince Gvaidin, and the older sisters arrange to have both the mother and child sealed in a barrel and thrown into the sea. You know,
that's
reasonable.
not fair.
That's not quite as fair. Because it's a fairy tale, the sea takes pity on them and casts them on the shore of a remote island, Bouillon. And the son, having quickly grown while in the barrel, goes hunting. And he ends up saving an enchanted swan from a kite bird. The swan creates a city for Prince Gvaidin to rule, but he is homesick, so the swan actually turns him into a mosquito to help him. And in the guise of a mosquito, he flies home, and where he stings one of his ants in the eye and then escapes. Back in his realm, he continues to pine for home, so the swan transforms him again, this time into a fly. And in this guise, he visits the home court again and stings the other ant in her eye, and on the 3rd time, the prince is transformed into a bumblebee, and that's where, at this point in the opera, the Flight of the Bumblebee comes in. And flies back and he stings his grandmother in the nose. And these are all the people he needed revenge on for exiling his mother.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, the prince expresses a desire for a bride instead of his old home, at which point the swan is revealed to be a beautiful princess whom he marries. And then his father, the Tsar, comes and visits and is overjoyed to find his newly married son and daughter-in-law. And this is... I've never seen this, and I know it sounds stupid,
This
but like...
swan sounds very useless. Like,
right?
why couldn't she change the sun into like a Godzilla and be like, all right, go rampaging now? And you turn someone into a mosquito and they're going to get swatted like immediately.
Immediately.
Yeah.
My interpretation of this story is just ridiculous and dumb in a really
Also,
fun way.
Flies don't sting. At least, I mean, there must be a species of fly that stings, but like I think of house flies and they just fly.
Well, it didn't say housefly, so it could be a
It
horsefly
must be some
or something.
stingy fly that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, maybe.
This is very stupid.
It's a very stupid opera, but it has at least one good song in it.
Yeah,
That's fair.
Probably has other good songs in it. I don't know the other ones.
just not as famous.
Just
Yeah.
not as famous. So with that out of the way, I guess we should probably talk about question number 1 this week,
Please.
which is, if we made pet frogs illegal, would there be a black market demand for them?
Frognarks.
Frog narcs.
I have an answer for this question.
Friday on Fox. You have an answer.
And the answer is apparently yes.
Apparently, yes. Okay.
Yeah. Because I guess there's a black market for poisonous Amazon rainforest frogs that they're trying to import illegally into places.
Yeah, it turns
Yeah.
out there is actually.
Yeah.
I was going to say, that we know for a fact that the answer is yes, only because, let's face it, the Streisand effect is a thing.
Yeah. If something's illegal, someone's going to want it just
Yep.
because.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay, so that's where I kind of wanted to start with this, because I want to know, and this question was anonymously submitted, so I can't ask this follow-up question, but I want to know what the point of asking this was, because like, how philosophical are we supposed to get with this?
that's
because
so
like,
mean.
I didn't
if
mean
you're
it in a
listening,
mean.
submitter question person, please.
I mean, I think it's a great question to be asking.
I didn't
like-
mean it in a mean way. I meant like, what are you getting at with this
Yeah.
question?
Or maybe they want to import an illegal tree frog and they need us to give them validation.
Well, so like, is there a demand for pet frogs as is one way to explore it? Or are we exploring the idea that anything being made illegal there inherently makes it desirable? Like,
Well, that's actually where I went, because I was thinking about the fact of like, if we made all frogs illegal, then I feel like it would create a demand for it. Because like, for example, alligators and crocodiles, people like to
Ooh.
buy those as exotic pets.
Uh-huh.
And
True,
they're
true.
pretty illegal most places. And everyone knows that an alligator and a crocodile is going to get to be as big or bigger as a human being. But they're like, oh, I'm going to get a cute little crocodile. And then
Bathtub
they can't...
crocodile.
Yeah, and then you
Bathtub
can't take
crocodile.
care of it because it's bigger than your bathtub. And you have to throw it out your back porch.
that's why New
Yeah.
York City is full of crocodiles in the sewers, because people flush them down the toilet.
Yep.
And
It's just a wild, I don't know.
And that's how Spider-Man got a croc as a villain. Not really, but hey.
Oh.
I mean, I'm sure that interpretation has been done.
Oh, I'd be shocked if it hadn't.
I thought the sewer crocodile thing was like folklore.
I mean, in real life it is, but
Oh,
I
okay.
think
But in
I think in
Spider-Life-
Gotham City there are crocodiles in the
Yeah.
sewers.
I mean, yeah, now that you mention that Killer Croc does generally live in the sewers.
Oh,
yeah, there you go.
And so does, I am blanking on the character's actual name, but the Croc from Spider-Man. He generally makes his labs in the sewers
Mm.
because something, I fit in down here.
Yeah.
Because early 90s comics.
Yeah, basically.
If you're going to make like a chemistry lab, then a sewer is a good place to do it because there's probably a lot of chemicals coming in.
There are a lot of chemicals in the sewer, that's true.
And, any weird odors that might leak out into the city, people are just going to be like, it's just the sewers.
Yeah, it's definitely not this mad crocodile scientist trying to create a cure for life.
Well, Occam's razor, the first place I go is the mad scientist.
I was going to say, like, maybe in our world, like, I wouldn't necessarily go to, it's, some half man, half crocodile mad scientist. But you live in the Marvel universe.
Oh, yeah, that's the first thing I'm thinking.
You literally, on the daily, deal with superpowered individuals, both good and evil.
Yeah.
You're not just going to smell something weird coming from a sewer grate and go, crap, what's the croc up to now?
But in real life, we might go, crap, because it's in the...
Well, yeah.
If you live in New York City in the Marvel universe, that's entirely on you.
If you live in New York City in the Marvel universe, you just live in the Marvel universe because it is all New York City.
Yeah. But, like, if you don't move out of New York City and something happens to you, then that's all the way on you.
Yep.
Frogs.
I want to make a supervillain who is running a poison dart frog smuggling ring.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
And that's what the adventure is about.
Yeah. That's that street level Batman stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think we can all agree that the answer is just inherently yes. If you've paid attention to even just like relatively modern history with like the 20s and Prohibition.
I was going to say that.
Like as soon as the government says no, someone else is going to go, that's funny. Here's a dozen of them for $300 each.
Yeah. Yep, we'll get them for you.
I want to tell you a funny one that I saw. That was there was I think this was in Chile. Let me just check my notes here. Yeah, it was in Chile. So this was in Chile. So I guess there was a demand for what was called designer ice cubes, which were hewn from glaciers and intended to be used for whiskey.
I don't
because
like
I guess glacier ice is good in whiskey. I don't know. I don't have a glacier, so who knows? But so he got caught with a lot of glacier ice from a like national park glacier that is federally protected in Chile. So he went to jail.
Oh no.
I don't like that.
Well,
I don't like anything about that story.
It's the stupidest story I could find about stupid black markets.
Well, kids, don't do glaciers.
Don't do glaciers. Well, I want to back up a bit because since Joe, since you brought up Prohibition, I looked at a few different things. I looked at drug trade and I looked at ivory trade, and there's a reason I'm combining them. We know that prohibiting alcohol in the United States gave a huge amount of business to, those guys. And, but there is actually an argument that is legitimately made in the United States now for legalizing narcotics like heroin and meth and stuff, because it would take business away from drug cartels and the government could then tax that stuff. So black marketeers don't want these things to be legal. They want to be able to profit from them.
Yeah.
Right.
But the interesting thing about that is ivory used to be huge business. And I actually learned that ivory trade was legal in China as recently as 2017.
Wow.
And reports have actually shown that since it was made illegal in 2017, the demand for it has been on a fairly steady downward trajectory. And I was kind of thinking, like, the first thing I think of when I think of ivory is piano keys used to be made out of ivory.
Okay.
But mostly they were just used decoratively to like sculpt and carve things. There's not really like anything you were going to make out of ivory, you could make out of something else.
Right.
Whereas alcohol, like if you want to drink alcohol, there's not really much else you can use. It has to be
just narcotics.
So there's certain things that you can make it illegal and people aren't as interested in acquiring it.
Yeah.
Prohibition was a big deal.
Yeah.
But the ivory trade we don't talk about so much anymore.
Right.
Well, and then kind of in that same vein as well, I mean, going potentially a little darker, so feel free to stop me if you want, but I mean, there is the aspect of also then like prostitution.
Oh.
And there's actually a very large push to, actually right now in the US to remove that status so that it can then become, regulated, which then provides extra protections for those workers. And also
sense.
then, in theory, helps to reduce cases of human trafficking.
And that actually is the case and has been for longer than people realize in Nevada.
Mm-hmm.
In Las Vegas, prostitution at brothels is actually legal.
Yes.
And it's healthier because they're like regulated by doctors and stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
There was I always hear about like the Netherlands and legalizing various drugs there. Mm-hmm. And I guess as they have become legal, they become less in demand because they're sort of like once they're legal, then they're sort of not cool anymore. That's such a gross, reductive, like simplification of the situation.
Right.
The fact that they become legal makes them less desirable in a way. Sort of like the poisonous tree. Like, why would you want a poisonous tree frog as a pet? Well, because it's illegal. It's a status thing. It's like a really, rare and valuable creature.
The thing I think of is there's like a trope in literature of like the super rich, super evil, I own a pet tiger and I like illegal things because they're expensive and I can kind of super villain.
Like the one from Captain Planet.
Like, yeah, right? So
loot and plunder.
And then you get into dangerous game territory where if you're rich enough, you can afford to hunt people,
Yeah.
Which leads me to something I didn't put down in my notes, but just thought of now. It's still technically legal, and I have a huge problem with this. It's still technically legal for people who spend enough money to go and shoot a black rhino.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
And you can be rich enough to do that, and I don't like that.
I mean, it actually doesn't even stop there. You can legally hunt, lions. You can legally hunt, these animals that are generally considered
extremely endangered.
However, there's this a large pushback from the governments that are allowing this, that actually this might not be as bad as you think. That they're actually, if it is done through the proper channels, and that's an if, admittedly.
Right.
But they actually select the animal for you, the specific one you'll be hunting. And they'll tend to go after either ones that have been extremely sick and actually endanger the rest of, for example, with lions, the rest of the pride. Or they'll select something that actually has been extremely destructive to the local crops, while the rest of the herd has been separate. This one maybe has come in and been doing damage.
Sure.
And refuses to leave.
I have actually, I've read a bit about it, so I did kind of know it was more complicated than that. And I guess my biggest issue with it gets into the super morally gray argument of I understand how it is helping the species, but if I met someone who was like, I'm going to spend $650 million to go shoot a lion, I'm going to be, why?
Yeah.
And I don't think we're friends.
Right.
And that's also fair. I mean, I have to admit, I wouldn't really enjoy being with that person either, because they're doing it for the status.
Yeah.
Right?
They're not doing it because, that money does then go to help, establishing funds to help then those endangered species, which is what Zimbabwe does, for example.
Right.
But it's still the fact that means that there was someone who was like, look, I got more money than God himself, and I feel like shooting something legally. What can you do for me?
I just like to picture somebody waking up in the morning saying, I feel like shooting something legally.
The last one I kind of wanted to bring up is, it's to me the funniest, but it's actually one of the largest examples of the, if it's illegal, people will want to do it anyway, is logging.
Logging, like cutting down trees?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
It is a huge source of income for like a lot of cartels. Mostly actually within like Southeast Asia, but what's interesting is that's actually why you'll see, for example, one of my preferred companies that I purchased products through is called Wormwood, and they actually have to specifically include that their woods are ethically sourced.
Oh, okay.
Because there is such a huge demand, not just for the raw material itself, but then the land that it's on.
Oh.
Right.
And it makes sense, actually, when you think about it with, like, since you mentioned Wormwood, I know they use a lot of rare wood from various parts of the world, so they probably have to be like, you know, we went through the proper channels on this one, because some of the wood, I'm sure, is probably on the black market. Well, with the first question in the bag, I think it's time for a new intermission segment. Welcome to the Wrestling Research Federation.
Cut my music! Cut my music!
This isn't your music. This is MJF's music from All Elite Wrestling.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it turns out MJF's entrance music is from YouTube's audio library, so it's in the public domain.
If he knew we were going to take it, he probably would have gone with something copyrighted.
Or, you know, at least something in Creative Commons.
He is not known for his wise decisions.
Clearly. Anyway, what is this?
Wrestling Research Federation is a segment where we look at the science behind wrestling. Even though the storylines are fake and the outcomes are predetermined, the wrestlers are still athletes.
Yeah, everything they do is stage combat, so they have to work incredibly hard to keep from getting hurt.
Exactly. And today I want to talk a little bit about some of the techniques they do to make things look real while making sure they don't hurt themselves or each other. First, I want to talk about how you calculate pressure. Pressure equals force over area. So to minimize pressure, you want to increase the area over which that pressure is spread.
That makes sense. If you watch a wrestling match carefully, you'll see that many of the strikes are actually with the forearm, and when wrestlers jump off the ropes onto their opponents, they spread their bodies out as they land.
By maximizing the area of the strike, it does less damage. An elbow or a knee will really hurt someone, but a forearm or a shin will blunt the impact. In a similar vein, most throws and drops are designed to make your opponent land on their back or their stomach. Landing like that gives a wrestler a lot of surface area to absorb the blow.
I think we should make it clear that a lot of these hits still hurt, like a lot, but they only do a little damage, like mostly bruising to the people doing them.
Yeah, and that's why wrestlers can get very hurt if things go even a little bit wrong. Actually, that reminds me of another interesting tidbit of wrestling science involving tables.
Being thrown through a table is a staple of wrestling.
And it's a simple force equals mass times acceleration situation. The table breaks and it decelerates the wrestler, breaking their fall. A wrestler can actually get hurt a lot worse if the table fails to break.
So there you have it. Wrestling is mostly fake, except for the pain and the science.
It's a soap opera with more punches and fewer love triangles.
That's... sure. Want to move on to the next question?
Please.
Question 2 this week. What technological advances would we need in order to make Pokéballs to catch real animals?
Well, you just have to make Pokemon first.
Can I tell you why I like this question specifically?
Please.
Okay.
I like that it's not how do we make Pokeballs work? It's actually sort of asking, please list all the reasons Pokeballs wouldn't work.
Fair.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm here for it.
I mean, I think the big one is going to be figuring out a way to convert matter into energy.
Quantum mechanics, my friends. Quantum
mechanics.
Mechanics.
Just brings us back to powder.
Jeez. I thought we were never going to talk about that again.
We don't talk about powder. Oh wait, that's copyrighted.
But yeah, I mean, the thing is that when you hit a Pokemon with a Pokeball, it turns into energy and gets sucked into the ball.
No, Jim.
Yeah.
No.
I think Joe's going to say what I was going to say.
Oh, it turns out, in fact, that the Pokemon chooses to become energy.
Oh, that's not what I was going to say.
Oh, well, then we don't have to solve that
Interesting.
problem at all because the Pokemon's choosing to do that. So I guess that's not...
So apparently, according to the lore that has come out in the newest game, which is Pokemon Legends Arceus.
Mhm.
And I'm out.
Apparently, Pokemon like and have the ability to shrink down and convert into energy. Just inherently.
Just like all Pokemon.
Which, I'm going to throw this out there. I think that's a cop-out, and I hate it.
It sure is.
Welcome to the biggest commercially successful franchise on Earth.
Herein lies the key problem, then, is that real animals can't do that. So maybe we just can't make Pokeballs. I think that Arceus ruined the question.
The question did specifically say, can we make them to catch real animals? And so I was going to dismiss Jim's first comment of first we need to make Pokemon, but now actually we need to...
Yeah.
I think we're actually not far off from that, weirdly.
No.
But yes, there's definitely a lot of genetic research that needs to go into that. But I think the first thing we need to tackle is the conversion factor of matter into energy, and then what happens with that energy.
Well, because the thing is that just because that's not how it works in the Pokemon world, we could do that with our Pokeball, so it actually works on real animals.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
and you're going to be looking at various forms of quantum mechanics, because there is a theory is a strong word for this. There is a potential within quantum mechanics that at any point I could walk into a solid wall a million times, and there is a very, very, very minuscule chance that one of those times I'll walk through it.
As quantum mechanics teaches us, anything can happen at any time for no reason.
Yeah.
So what we would need is basically have a small quantum tunneling device in that ball that can, trick quantum mechanics into allowing it to happen on a predetermined basis.
Now, I remember two different explanations, both from Pokemon franchises, and I don't remember which one said which. In one case, there was a depiction of a Psyduck who had been caught in a Pokeball, and Psyduck just shrank and basically took up as much space as he could in the Pokeball. I have also heard it explained to me that within a Pokeball, there exists a perfect environment for a Pokemon to live in comfortably.
Yeah.
Those are conflicting stances,
right.
I guess.
Yes.
And the problem is that it varies from canon to canon. Because, the game world is different than the anime, which is different from... Well, actually, so all of the different manga of Pokemon can vary from each other. So there's not a standardized... Nintendo has never said, this is how it works. And Game Freak has never said, this is how it works. It's just up to whoever's making whatever thing at the time, I suppose.
Well, and then let's also talk about the fact that technically, even within the games, there's technically, two different canons. Because you have the kind of main canon, which is all the mainline games plus Pokemon Legends.
Yeah.
And then the Let's Go series actually kind of does their own thing with it.
Yeah.
Because, in the Let's Go games, the Pokemon actually have the ability to, make their Pokeballs, jump and, run at high speeds.
Yeah.
Which no one else, none of the other games show that being able to happen.
Right. Although I think that's something that we see in the anime.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So it
fascinating.
agrees with that, but that doesn't help.
No.
Now, I want to bring something up. I thought maybe Joe was going to say this earlier. And it has been stated multiple times on this podcast that my experience with Pokemon is basically red and blue. And
Tangle is good.
And that point, like, I remember things. Like, I haven't played them in years. But something that stuck out to me was the PC in the game where you can transfer your Pokemon to a storage box. And the whole impetus for that, I guess, when they designed the game was kind of this meta explanation for transferring Pokemon from your Game Boy to a friend's Game Boy via a link cable, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so what I thought you were going to say is that Pokemon, when they go into Pokeballs, are transferred into data.
So that is also something I was going to bring up.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Okay.
the thing is that you're right, is that they have to be.
Yeah, but here's the kind of cool thing. That's not the hardest part of this to solve. Because it's actually not that difficult to take energy and use that to create data.
Oh, okay.
Because you would just basically use like the unique wavelengths of whatever energy we create. We'd probably change it into some sort of light form.
Oh, yeah, I was thinking fiber optics.
Yeah. And so then that would then create a very specific data or set of data that you would then be able to store as a file, basically.
Yeah.
Well, now, so where I was going to go with that, and this diehard Pokemon fans may get mad at me for this, but it's okay. I will take that burden on my shoulders. I was thinking, we talked a bit about teleportation when we talked about Star Trek matter transporters. And the idea of breaking down people into their information and making them again. And some people speculate that that's like cloning, and that so there's that whole argument, which I don't necessarily want to get into, but I remember there being a trick when you would trade one of your legendary Pokemon to your friend. And if you could risk corrupting your save file, of course, but if you turned your game off right at the right time, you could give them the legendary Pokemon and also keep it yourself.
That's right. Yeah.
So this is essentially cloning, right?
That absolutely would be cloning.
Yeah. So it sounds like that this is actually very close to a Star Trek transporter situation.
Yeah.
And that is the one note I had on this topic.
Well, because I'm thinking to myself, and this is like when you're catching a Pokemon and you're out in the field, the Pokemon immediately goes to your box if your party is full.
Yep.
Right.
So the Pokeball itself has to have that sort of matter transporter system built right into it.
Well, more than that, let's talk about the fact that not only does it transport the Pokemon, the entire Pokeball goes.
Yeah.
Oh, good point.
And actually, there's a lot of other stuff going on inside of that Pokeball, because it like registers your trainer information to it. It is able to grow and shrink so that you can store it more efficiently on your person, which I don't think that's the hardest part of all this.
No.
And it's also not really relevant. You don't have to do that to catch an animal. So.
True.
But the Pokeball is a very sophisticated piece of technology.
Oh, and also let's not forget that it also marks the Pokemon it catches, so that if another trainer attempts to catch that Pokemon again, it like literally creates an energy shield around that Pokemon and prevents it from getting captured.
Yeah.
That Pokemon like belongs to that Pokeball.
Which is actually why every time those dastardly Team Rockets show up, they either have to capture the Pokeball or they capture the Pokemon outside of a Pokeball.
Yeah.
In some sort of like net system or suction tube or what have you.
Or stupid hole in the ground.
That's interesting. I remember vaguely one episode of like the first season of the anime when it came out, and there was a thing where one of the members of Team Rocket traded a Pokemon for a Magikarp.
Oh, yeah.
And they had to put their Pokeballs in this little machine that would like suck them up and transfer them. And I always thought that's stupid. Why don't they just like hand each other? But like if it's rewriting ownership of that, I guess that makes more sense.
Pokemon might be Digimon.
I was gonna say, like, isn't that Digimon?
Yeah.
Yes.
They are data. Like they're literally digital monsters. That's
now the other sort of side of this coin is maybe it's that when they get hit by a Pokeball, they become data. Like they're animals until that happens, and then they're turned into data as they are being captured. Like the Pokeball. Well, I guess they can turn into energy themselves. So heck, they're Digimon, I guess.
According to
the new game, right?
Newest lore.
Well, because then you run into the really gray area of does the Pokeball then kill the Pokemon and make a digital clone of it?
Right.
Or does it Tron the Pokemon?
Yeah.
I haven't gotten very far into Arceus yet, but I feel like they don't know what they're talking about. It's just an observation that I've made.
To be fair, it does take place in the quote-unquote ancient history of the franchise.
Yeah.
So it's possible that information is more their belief.
Yeah.
And that later on that maybe turns out to not quite be the case.
Yeah.
This is just what happens when marketing executives write stories based on committee.
To be fair, Arceus is a very good game compared to the last several.
Yes. I've not gotten to play it yet, but from what I've heard, it is a much better game than like Sword and Shield or...
Yeah. I mean, I liked Sword and Shield, but I could not get into Sun and Moon at all.
Yeah, that was the next one I was trying to think of, Sun and Moon.
But
don't they always have like multiple versions? Does Arceus, is that just its own thing?
Yeah, it's like a side story kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's more akin to like a Souls game almost.
Yeah, in a very reductive way, yeah.
Yeah.
In a very reductive way.
I've had it described to me as a Pokemon-based Souls light.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of fair.
But
yeah, like you get to see all the Pokemon in the overworld. You have to like aim and throw the Pokeball at the Pokemon, and they can see you and attack you and hurt you, because that's how it should be. Like if you're a Pokemon and you see someone sneaking up on you, you're not going to stand by idly until they throw out a Pokemon.
In the heyday of Pokemon coming out and then Digimon coming out, I'm talking about Saturday morning cartoons here.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my favorite one that was like a Pokemon-like kind of show being Monster Rancher.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about
the
that.
reason for that, in the first episode, the kid, he's got like a backwards hat and rollerblades, and he's super 90s, right?
Right.
He gets sucked into this monster world, and there's these monsters fighting each other, and he runs in and he kicks one in the head.
Yep.
And I'm like, thank you. The people actually do something in this show.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever played the original Monster Rancher games on the PlayStation.
I played Monster Rancher 2.
Okay. So then you probably know the exact thing I'm about to bring up. But Monster Rancher did the inverse of what we're discussing.
Oh, right.
They put the humans in the Pokeballs.
No, they put the monsters in things that already existed.
Yeah. And like,
what you could do was you could summon new monsters. And the way you did this was that the PlayStation would stop spinning the game disc and tell you to open the tray, take out the game disc, and put in another disc of your choice.
like any CD.
Could be another game, could be a music CD. It was well before DVDs, so
Right.
it was generally those two.
Huh.
PS1 era.
Yeah.
So you could put like a Britney Spears CD in there, and it would give you like a
it
Britney
would
Spears
spin
monster.
it up and it would scan that disc, and based on the waveforms,
Yeah.
it would generate a monster. Now it always fell into like a certain set of classes, and,
Right.
Yeah.
But it was like if you used the same disc, you would always get the same monster. So
but you might get slightly different stats on it.
right.
It's really
right.
sophisticated.
It was it was a cool idea, and with games being like virtual now, there's like no way you could.
You can really do that now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if they did it in the 90s, we can do it now.
We can at least make things that create monsters.
Yeah, and again, those monsters are data because you're pulling them off of, a Britney Spears CD.
Yep. And they're toxic.
And once again, we have the copyrighted music.
I can say the name of the song.
Yes, but now it's in everyone's head.
Yeah. At least we got MJF's theme, which is completely free.
That's true.
It's perfectly okay to tell people, go look on YouTube and play this song at this point in the podcast if you want the full effect.
Yeah.
We're safe.
Okay.
But yeah, I think matter transportation and turning things into energy are the two big things, and I think those are a bit of a ways off.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, listeners, let us know how do you catch your illegal frogs since we don't have Pokeballs, right? Yeah. Jim, do we have listener mail?
We do. And as always, if you want to send us listener mail, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com. You can comment on our blog. You can like us on Facebook. You can tweet at vaguelysci. And this email comes to us from David. Not our David, but some other David out there. It's one of the Davids, And this is in regards to episode 93, filling your tires with solid helium.
Ah, yes.
And David writes, bees' knees are also pretty great because their legs are divided into way more segments than a human's legs. And I had to look this up. I thought it was kind of interesting. Apparently, they have like, I forget now. I should have pulled it back up, but it was like 5 or 6 different segments in their legs, whereas we have like 2,
Yeah,
So,
right.
so that's kind of cool.
They're more complex for sure.
Yeah, because I was reading about how the front legs are more complex because they have to be able to get up and like clean the antenna and stuff.
I liked the wholesome nature of that discussion because it wasn't are bees' knees actually great. It was just list all the reasons why bees' knees are great.
Yeah. Not wasp knees though. Those are terrible.
Well, wasps the parts don't necessarily equal the whole in the.
That's
in
fair.
Yeah.
I do. I like watching a wasp fly as long as there's a healthy distance between me and the wasp.
I don't mind that they exist. I just don't want them near me.
Yeah.
That's understandable.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for that email. And if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, all the great places,
Yeah.
You just punch them in and it's like, hey, there's the Vaguely Scientific one. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out. And so does telling your friends.
Yeah, especially if they're like diehard Pokemon fans so that they can get really mad at us and send us all the hate mail.
Yeah, and then we can read that hate mail.
Yeah!
Heck yeah.
Our vaguely musical intro is composed by Anthony Pizzelli, and don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. I guess they just added jigsaw puzzles.
That's pretty cool.
I don't know if we have, I have to go in and check boxes to make that happen, but I'm hoping by the time this episode airs, I will have checked some boxes and there will be some jigsaw puzzles you can buy.
Nice.
Yeah, because that seems like a fun thing to do.
Cool. Yeah. So go get your jigsaw puzzles and your skateboards and your
No
mugs.
one does jigsaw puzzles anymore, They used to be like a big thing.
Some people are really enthusiastic about jigsaw puzzles now.
Me and my mom used to make jigsaw puzzles when I was a kid, and I thought that was fun. I haven't done that in 15, 20 years.
I don't have a jigsaw, so it's hard to make a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
Well, thank you to Joe for being our guest this week.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. For Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
I'm Joe.
And we gotta go catch them all.
Yeah. Toodaloo, Gary Oak. Smell you later, jerk.
Cut my music.
Cut. That's the wrong music. To play the outro. There we go.
There you go.
what really gets you thinking is the fact that bears don't have opposable thumbs.
They don't.
So I don't know how they held those hammers.
I was thinking of them building that little cottage and the chairs and the beds. Or unless they contracted those, I don't know. But they can at least make porridge, and that's important to me.
Yeah. Again, opposable thumbs you need for like the spoons and stuff.